Brothers y brothercitas, todos sabemos que una de las cosas que más ha manchado hasta ahorita la administración de Trump fue la forma como Pam Bondi lidió con este problema de los files de Epstein Brothers, que hizo un desbarajuste y no lo sacó cuando había prometido sacarlos, había prometido sacar información diferente a la que ya teníamos, mintió. Dio folders con información a influencers que pues a la hora de la hora era lo mismo que habían dado antes. O sea, hizo un desbarajuste, prometió enseñar videos que nunca enseñó. Yo creo que esa fue una de las razones por las cuales Trump la mandó a freír espárragos a otro lado, porque dijo, vales cacahuate, mijita. Y la verdad sí, Pam Bondi es culpable de este desbarajuste. Y no nada más lo digo yo, lo dice J.D. Vance, aquí en esa entrevista que tuvo con Joe Rogan, que en mi opinión es, yo creo que la mejor entrevista que yo le he visto hacer a Joe Rogan. Y la verdad, yo no soy así como que mega fan de Joe Rogan, pero hay hecho entrevistas muy malas que hace y se hacen virales, malísimas, pero se hacen virales. Esta es muy buena y se hizo viral, brothers. La verdad, chequen lo que dice aquí Joe Rogan acerca de cómo manejaron esto de los files de Epstein y por qué atacó, por qué le manchó la administración a Trump. Y no nada más eso, también aquí revelan para quién trabajaba Epstein, a quién obedecía, quién le decía qué hacer. Chequen.
Right, but why was he motivated to influence academia, and what was the purpose?
I don't know the answer to that question. I mean,
está preguntando Joe Rogan por qué Epstein quería meterse en la educación de los niños, por qué quería influenciar escuelas, por qué quería meterse en este tipo de cosas. Y le dice J.D. Vance, no sé.
I have theories. There's of course
Well, most people think he was Mosad.
Yeah, Mosad or CIA or some other deep state, whether in America or Israel or another country. Or both. Look, he clearly had connections to the highest levels of American intelligence. He clearly had connections to the highest levels of Israeli intelligence. In fact, one of the interesting things the Epstein saga reveals about, and I try to make this point, is one of the reasons why I'm always careful, and I say there are some elements within the Israeli government who don't like our peace process, because there are a lot of elements within the Israeli government that actually do like our peace process. They recognize that this indefinite campaign is not good for them either. And the Epstein thing is interesting because as much as I know, Prime Minister Netanyahu, not a particularly popular person in the United States of America right now, Epstein seemed to be connected to the elements of the Israeli deep state that were left of center. Like, I've always found that fascinating. It wasn't like he was super connected to the right of center of Israeli politics. America, he was connected across the board. Like, he had Republican friends, he had Democratic friends. He had much deeper connections to the Israeli left of center than right of center. I don't know what that means.
He was hanging out with Steve Bannon and Noam Chomsky.
Exactly. He had, again, in America, he had friends across the political spectrum in a way he didn't necessarily have in Israel.
Ahí está, lo acaba de decir. Era de los dos, brothers. Él obedecía a los dos departamentos de inteligencia más temidos en el mundo, de los más cañones, la CIA, que es de Estados Unidos, y los Mosad, que son justamente de Israel. Ahora, las razones y las pruebas, dónde está todo aquello que quedó, lo siguieron hablando, brothers. Y esos son los detalles que traen todo a la luz. Chequen.
But if people want to say we mishandled the Epstein release, guilty. We did mishandle, especially the communications of it.
What do you think should have been done?
I think that we should have just dropped everything at the very beginning. And obviously it takes a little time to review the stuff, to find the stuff, to redact things where you have victims and so forth. But we should have just done it as quickly as possible.
But some of the stuff that was redacted, some of the names that were redacted weren't victims.
So, yeah, I've looked into this and...
Esto es muy importante, brothers, porque lo que le acaba de decir Joe Rogan es importantísimo. Le dijo, pero ¿cómo es posible que ustedes, o sea, el Departamento de Justicia, Pam Bondi, Todd Blanche, todos ellos, redactaron, o sea, tacharon en cuadros negros, rectángulos negros, nombres de víctimas, que es lo obvio, pero también redactaron nombres que no eran víctimas? O sea, ¿por qué están protegiendo gente? Y eso se lo tiraron en la cara a Trump varias veces. y a todos. Esta explicación que da J.D. Vance es importantísima porque dice algo que a muchos de ustedes los va a tirar de nachas. Yo ya lo había dicho antes, pero aquí lo repite y lo dice él. Chequen.
My understanding of this, having looked at a lot of this, but not all of it, is that it is sometimes hard to draw a distinction between victim and co-conspirator. And let me highlight this in a very sort of obvious way. Ro Khanna, who's been one of the loudest voices on the Epstein file. Well, he became very loud on the Epstein files the minute Donald Trump became president, didn't seem to care about it during the Biden administration. He actually brought one of the Epstein victims, I think, to the State of the Union last year, or maybe it was the year before last. Well, that victim, and I'm not saying she wasn't a victim. I don't know anything about her particular case. She was also listed as a co-conspirator in some of these documents. Right, so there's an idea that some of the people who were engaged in the sex trafficking were also, facilitating it as well.
So they were in.
Ahí está. La razón por la cual tuvieron que redactarlo, obviamente los nombres de las víctimas siempre van a ir tachados, pero nombres que no eran de víctimas es porque las mismas víctimas aparecían como conspiradoras de los delitos de Epstein, trayéndole mujeres y contactando chavitas para que vinieran a trabajar o a hacer las cosas que Epstein les decía. Entonces, eran víctimas, pero después se hicieron victimarias. Entonces, tenían que tachar el nombre del lado de la víctima y cuando reaparecían como victimaria o conspiradora, tenían que volver a tacharlo. Y eso fue lo que pensó y lo que le tiraron a Trump en cara, de que por qué estaba protegiendo gente que había conspiradora, los criminales. Pues no es que los estuvieran protegiendo, es que era la misma víctima aquí en el lado de los conspiradores. Y eso pasó muchísimas veces, es lo que está diciendo J.D. Vance.
Advised to get more girls.
Yeah, but yes, that's right. But the idea is that it's hard to sort of, it's sometimes a little bit of a gray area between, some of the people who were alleged victims were also alleged co-conspirators. And so what DOJ tried to do was kind of make that judgment as best they could and release as much as possible. The problem is, if you go back to the original investigation, it was designed in a way that was way too narrow. If there was a broader conspiracy, and my view is that there probably was, the evidence that existed in 2007, that was the opportunity to get
So
it.
when you say there probably was a broader conspiracy, what exactly are you saying?
I think there are a few different options. I mean, look, man, you and I could literally do 2 episodes about this. I've gone on down to every rabbit hole.
But it's clear that he was trying to get in contact with people that he felt were influential. It was clear that he was trying to get people to get together on the island and meet at parties. So there was something he was doing where he was trying to either influence people or compromise people.
Correct.
So it's not, there's some sort of an operation that was going on.
There is a story there, and, I will go to my deathbed believing there's a story there, but I can't prove it. And I promise you there's not some document that at least I'm hiding that allows us to prove exactly what was going on in it.
Ahora, brothers, está cañón porque les digo que es una de las mejores entrevistas que ha tenido Joe Rogan. Y J.D. Vance se prestó porque le contestó todo lo que él pensaba. De hecho, le contestó hasta si de verdad él pensaba, o sea, J.D. Vance pensaba que Donald Trump tuvo que ver algo con Epstein haciendo las cosas malas. Yo aquí en la fregadera, brothers, he comprobado con documentos del FBI, me metí a archivos, me metí a 1000 cosas, comprobando que en el 2006 Donald Trump se convirtió en un informante del FBI para que arrestaran a Epstein. Si él hubiera tenido algo que ver, en mi opinión, nunca lo hubiera hecho porque se lo iban a llevar a él también entre las patas. Sin embargo, él fue informante del FBI para que arrestaran a Epstein en el 2006, lo arrestaron por ahí en el 2007-2008. Le dieron un mini castigo porque fue cosa de... Le ayudaron a Epstein y salió. Pero Trump se hizo un informante del FBI, lo cual quiere decir que no hizo... O sea, ¿cómo te vas a tirar a alguien si te puede meter a ti entre las patas, si es que hiciste algo? Ahora, después, cuando se volvió presidente en el 2017, Trump arrestó a Epstein y fue a la cárcel en el 18 o 19. Chequen lo que dice J.D. Vance.
I've heard this argument is this idea that Donald Trump, was sort of, I've even heard people say he was blackmailed into this.
Yeah,
by
a lot
the
of people
Israelis.
think that.
That's not true, dude.
No?
It's just not true. I've
Aquí
seen
aquí está diciendo Jerry Vance que dice la gente que Donald Trump le hicieron blackmail, chantaje, para que empezara la guerra en Israel o que si no iban a sacar algo que él hizo con Epstein. Y dice J.D. Vance que esa es la peor mentira que ha oído en su vida.
making up close again. Whether you agree or disagree with our negotiation, or whether you agree or disagree with the decision to launch the campaign Epic Fury to begin with, the idea that Donald Trump is being like blackmailed is crazy to me. Because again, I see the way that he makes decisions. I see the way that he processes this stuff. Like the idea that he picks up the phone with anybody and says, hey, like I'm going to take orders from you. No, that's just not how Donald Trump operates.
Could you understand, though, why people would come to that conclusion, especially because of the Epstein files?
What do you mean?
Well, the Epstein files were supposed to be released, and there was a tremendous amount of resistance to those files being released. And that concerned a lot of people. Because if you're talking about very wealthy, powerful people that were engaged in crimes.
I see. So you're basically saying like the fear is that whatever's in the Epstein files was used to blackmail like the administration into doing the Iran thing.
Or at the very least, the people that were involved in the Epstein files that didn't want them coming out had undue influence.
Well, again, like, say this with all candor, like, we absolutely screwed up the comms of the Epstein files. Like, we just did. But do I think the reason we screwed up the comms is because we were trying to hide something? No. I think the reason we screwed up the comms of the Epstein files is one, Pam Bondi said the client list is on my desk, right?
Well, they had binders. They were standing
100%,
in front.
But those binders were largely documents that had already been released, right? So let me try to
Well, what was
let me try to
the
defend.
purpose of that performative display of the Epstein files? And she was saying there's tens of thousands of hours of film.
I don't know what the purpose of it was, but I know that the effect of it was to make people mistrust the entire effort. And what I think was happening, look, I know Pam, I like Pam, I don't think there was anything malicious going on. I think Pam was trying to respond to the political moment. I think she overstated what we had and what we didn't have. And I think that she, got roasted for it publicly by a lot of people, including me. Like, you and I have talked about this a lot. I'm like one of the OG Epstein conspiracy theorists. I've probably gone down every single rabbit hole. We could go down most of them today. Look, the original sin of the Epstein investigation, and obviously I'm biased here, but it was not what Donald Trump and the administration did in 2025. It was, you have to go back to 2007, 2008.
¿Y por qué? Pues porque son los años donde arrestaron por primera vez a Epstein, brothers, y según J.D. Vance, después de esos años destruyeron toda la evidencia, como videos y todas las cosas, durante la administración del presidente que estaba en esa época. ¿Quién fue? El que estuvo antes de Obama, o a lo mejor el mismo Obama. Entonces, sí, porque Obama estuvo en el 2008, ¿sí? Tuvo que haber sido el que estaba antes, creo que era Bush, o sea, un republicano. Entonces, está cañón, pero por lo menos sabemos, como lo dice J.D. Vance, es comprobado que estaba trabajando para las dos agencias de inteligencia, CIA y el Mosad, brothers. Está cañón.
Pinched. I think he goes to prison, or maybe this is when he was on house arrest. Mm-hmm. But like anything that existed from the 80s and 90s up to 2006, 2007, anything that existed that we didn't get back then was disappeared, right? So, like when people say, "Has what you've seen on the inside make you think that that Epstein never blackmailed people, or that Epstein never engaged in broader sex trafficking?" No, absolutely not. What I have seen, and I've looked at most of the files, is that there just wasn't dispositive evidence. And if that dispositive evidence ever existed, it was probably destroyed after 2006, 2007. Now, like again, in our defense, yes, was there some bitching and moaning, and was there some back and forth? Yes, but we eventually collected 6 million documents as part of the effort. The president, people say the president was forced into releasing the documents. Like, again, the idea that Donald Trump could not have killed that legislation, especially with the United States Senate, is a joke. He absolutely could have killed it. What did he do? He actually said, "No, we're going to release these files. He thought, you know, he was annoyed by the story. He was annoyed by the Democrats accusing him of doing things bad. By the way, like, do I think there is any, I've never seen a single piece of credible evidence that the President of the United States engaged in wrongdoing with minors, ever. So, like, when the president says the hoax, that's what he's talking about, is this democratic idea that he somehow was a pedophile. It's absurd. There's no evidence for it. Now, the Epstein, you know, law gets signed. We find 6 million documents. We find out 3 million of them are actually responsive, has something to do with the Epstein estate. We release all of them, with the exception of a few things that are like, you know, the courts have said that we have to redact certain things or we can't release certain files. But, like, we did release all these files. Did it take longer than it should have taken? Yes. But we did release these files. And again, the problem here is not, like, anything that's in the files or not in the files. The problem is, if you go back to the original investigation, it was designed in a way that was way too narrow. If there was a broader conspiracy, and you know my view is that there probably was, the evidence that exists.
Y ahí lo dice, que la evidencia ha sido destruida, brothers. Y que sí, Trump y su administración cometieron el error, gracias a Pam Bondi, de no sacar las cosas como tenía que sacarlas. Pero de ahí a que Trump esté ocultando información para ocultarse él como culpable o como que hizo algo mal, definitivamente no. Y eso yo sí lo creo. Díganme ustedes qué piensan, brothers. Suscríbanse, por favor, compártanlos. Leo en los comentarios. Los amo.